The morning after I gave birth, my husband sent me $50,000. And for years, I thought that meant he loved me. I was wrong. People often say that if you want to know whether a marriage is truly happy, don't look at the wife's smile at social parties. Look into her eyes when she's sitting alone in a luxury car in the parking lot, right before she walks into her house. My name is Laura Carter. I'm 38 years old. If you ever drive through the oak-lined streets of North Chicago's suburbs, you might pass by our house. It's a classic Tudor-style mansion with red brick walls and perfectly trimmed climbing vines. It looks like a permanent Christmas card. For the past 12 years, I've been living inside that card. My husband, Lucas, is the kind of man every woman at the country club quietly envies me for. He's 45, tall, with salt and pepper hair that's meticulously trimmed every 2 weeks at an upscale barbershop downtown. Lucas never raises his voice. He never gets drunk and embarrasses me in front of others. He is the embodiment of calm success. But there's one truth that took me over a decade to admit. Lucas gave me everything a woman could ever want except himself. I remember clearly the early days when we first met. I was 26 back then, like a moth drawn to the light of stability. Lucas was already a rising star in corporate restructuring. When he walked into a room, the space seemed to adjust itself around him. His confidence wasn't loud. It was quiet like the surface of a lake at dawn. I married him after just 1 year of dating. At the time, I thought I had won the lottery of life. I loved the way he placed his hand gently on my back at parties. I loved how he always chose the finest wine without even glancing at the price. But now, looking back, I realized something painful. I loved the idea of him more than the man himself. And tragically, Lucas did the same. He married me because I fit perfectly into the blueprint of the life he had already designed. In Lucas's world, love isn't measured in morning kisses or midnight whispers. It's measured in transactions. The first moment I realized this was the morning after our daughter Emily was born. I was still lying in the hospital bed exhausted, overwhelmed with happiness, waiting for a warm embrace or at least a simple, "I'm proud of you." Lucas arrived, dressed impeccably, as if he had just stepped out of a board meeting. He held Emily, smiled politely, then placed her back into the crib. Then he took out his phone. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed on the bedside table. A notification from my banking app. "You have received $50,000. I looked up at him, still dazed from the painkillers. "What is this?" Lucas simply shrugged, adjusting his cufflinks. "You gave me a daughter." That sentence should have hurt me right then and there. But this world has taught us that money is the ultimate form of security. When I told my mother, she laughed and said I was the luckiest woman alive. 3 years later, when Lucas was born, another $50,000 appeared. Lucas called it a thank you. Gradually, I got used to being compensated for being a wife and a mother. Lucas paid for everything. The children's private school tuition, summer vacations in the Hamptons, Michelin star dinners where we sat across from each other, but rarely spoke. Occasionally, he would transfer an extra $5,000 or $10,000 into my personal account with a message, "Buy something nice." I rarely spent it. The money just sat there cold and lifeless, like the air in our bedroom. Lucas was the perfect husband in front of my parents. He once saved my brother's failing business with an investment and never mentioned it again. He helped the kids with homework. He attended parent meetings when his schedule allowed. But when the bedroom door closed, Lucas disappeared. Not physically. He was still there, lying beside me. But emotionally, he was gone. We didn't have explosive arguments, but we didn't have shared dreams either. Our conversations revolved around the kids' schedules, travel plans, kitchen renovations. One night, I tried to break through that invisible wall. I asked him why we had become so distant, why intimacy had become something that happened only once every few months. Lucas looked at me with a calmness that felt almost unsettling. "You've given me 2 children. That's the most important part. I don't really need anything else." My chest tightened. I didn't know if that was gratitude or the deepest form of indifference. Maybe it was both. I eventually realized something. Lucas wasn't lacking passion. He just wasn't giving it to me. All his energy, his ambition, his soul were poured into his company. And there, 2 other women were receiving the best parts of the man I called my husband. The first was Emma. She was only 23 when she joined the company. Emma wasn't seductive or flashy. She was intelligent, quiet, with a subtle, understated beauty. She came from a modest working-class family and was endlessly grateful to Lucas for giving her an opportunity. The first time I met her was at a company dinner. She greeted me politely, complimented my dress, even helped carry dishes to the table. I remember thinking, what a nice girl. But then, I started seeing her everywhere. In every company photo online, standing next to Lucas. On every business trip to London, Tokyo, she was always there. Lucas said she handled everything: scheduling, communication, logistics. It all sounded reasonable. But one thing didn't. Lucas never interacted with me on social media. He never liked photos of me or our family. But every single post Emma made, Lucas was the first to like it. Then there were the gifts. Emma would post pictures of Hermes handbags, Cartier watches, massive bouquets of flowers. She never mentioned who gave them, but I noticed a painful pattern. They always appeared on the same holidays, when Lucas gave me gifts. I received financial security. She received the romance I had always longed for. The second was Olivia, completely different from Emma. Older, sharp, confident, powerful. Lucas once told me she was the most talented employee he had ever worked with. 2 years ago, he bought her a brand new BMW. He called it a performance bonus. When I asked, "Don't you think that's a bit too generous?" he simply said, "She deserves it." Olivia stood beside Lucas in high-stakes negotiations. She shared his excitement over million-dollar deals. She understood the complex world of numbers, a world I, as a stay-at-home wife, was never invited into. There were no secret messages, no scandals, no dramatic affairs. Everything stayed within professional boundaries. And somehow, that was the most terrifying part. Lucas didn't need a traditional affair, because he already had another family at the office, the place where he truly lived. He spent only 3 or 4 nights a week at home. The rest of the time, he claimed he was working late, or staying at his apartment near the office. I never questioned him, not because I was naive, but because I understood the cost of leaving. In this world, freedom is never free. Our house was tied to a trust. Most assets were linked to his company. And most importantly, my children loved their father. So I chose to stay. Not because I was weak, but because life is rarely as simple as romantic movies make it seem. Still, deep inside, one question never left me. Am I a lucky woman, or just living inside a luxurious illusion? The answer came at last year's company Christmas party. It was held in a luxury hotel in downtown Chicago. That night, I wore a simple but expensive black dress, standing by the bar, observing the room. Lucas stood among clients and investors. He looked relaxed, confident, alive. It was a version of him I rarely saw at home. Then I saw Emma walk up to him and whisper something in his ear. Lucas laughed. Not the polite laugh he used with business partners, but a warm, genuine, unguarded laugh. For a moment, jealousy flared inside me like fire. But then, just as suddenly, it disappeared, replaced by something else. Clarity. I realized Lucas wasn't flirting with Emma. He wasn't trying to seduce her. He was simply being himself. And in that moment, everything made sense. Emma wasn't his lover. She was his emotional companion. She shared his daily life, his ambitions, his frustrations, his small victories. Olivia wasn't a secret affair either. She was his strategic partner, the one helping him build the empire he valued above everything else. And me? I was the one who built the home. I created the safe harbor, the perfect family image that allowed him to walk confidently into the world. For 12 years, I thought I was competing with other women, but the truth was quieter and far more brutal. I was never competing with Emma or Olivia. I was competing with the one thing Lucas loved more than this marriage: his work, his ambition, his purpose. And once I understood that, something inside me became strangely peaceful. Anger only exists when promises are broken. But looking back, Lucas never promised to love me the way I had hoped. He promised stability, security, respect, a good life for our children, and he fulfilled every one of those promises. The only thing he never promised, and could never give, was emotional intimacy. And suddenly, I saw it clearly. Maybe Lucas didn't fail this marriage. Maybe I was the one who misunderstood it from the very beginning. I didn't marry a romantic man. I married a man whose true love was his career, and I was simply the woman who kept the rest of his life running smoothly. For 12 years, I believed I had a perfect husband, but the truth is much simpler. I never truly had a husband in the emotional sense. I married a man whose heart belonged somewhere else, long before I ever appeared. And somehow, this truth hurts less than the years of doubt I carried, because sometimes the quietest truth is the most honest one. Now, sitting in this vast marble kitchen, I no longer feel like a victim. I am a partner in a long-term contract. I will continue to keep this home warm, raise our wonderful children, and receive Lucas's thank you payments. I no longer search for love in his eyes, because I know exactly where it is, in financial reports and in meetings at the office. And perhaps, at 38, this awakening is the most valuable gift I've ever received, worth far more than any transfer Lucas ever made into my account. Tell me honestly, would you stay in a marriage like this, where you're taken care of, but never truly loved?